pick up almost any newspaper, magazine, turn on the TV, and you hear all kinds of articles about cocaine, heroin, marijuana, ecstasy, all the drugs that are illegal or illicit still get a lot of attention. What I don't hear much about and really think we need to talk a lot more about is, in my mind, the third most common form of substance abuse or dependency in this country, which is prescription drug abuse, prescription drug dependency. You hear very little about that. And yet, currently, there are over 4.8 million Americans over the age of 12 who use prescription drugs for non-medical purposes. In the elderly, prescription drug abuse or dependency is the most common form of drug problem, not cocaine, not heroin. Women are 2 times more likely than men to become addicted to tranquilizers or sleeping pills. Now that, I think, is partly due to the fact that doctors tend to prescribe those drugs too easily to women. There's a tendency, I think, on the part of male physicians to see female patients as needing some help along those lines. The 3 most common forms of drugs that are abused or that one becomes dependent on are the opiates, or opioid-like drugs. Those are painkillers. They include drugs like codeine, morphine, Demerol. But nowadays we're hearing and seeing a lot more people are using some of the more, quote, modern versions of pain relievers that have been designed to react over time to where you take the pill, or they even have it in a patch form, different kinds of pain relievers that are time released so you don't have to take it every so many hours. You can take it once a day, or even some of the patches you change once every 3 days. They contain very powerful drugs. Some of the names of these are things like Duragesic, or fentanyl patches. OxyContin is one that's being widely talked about and widely abused, because what people do, what the addict has figured out, is that you can take these time release features and get around them so that you can get that 3-day supply of painkiller in 1 injection. Or you can get that 12-hour time release pill, all the medicine that's supposed to be given you over that period of 12 hours, at one time by breaking it down, grinding it up, snorting it, eating it. If you can dissolve it, injecting it. This is becoming widely known amongst the addict population and widely abused. I should add, how do these drugs work? How do these painkillers work? They have 2 features that I think are rather unique. First of all, they fill what we call opiate receptors, and there's a whole bunch of different types in the brain. And we give them nice Greek letters, naming them. But basically, they fill a receptor in your brain that dulls the pain, that kills the pain. Mother Nature makes substances that do the same thing in our own brain. We call them endorphins or enkephalins. But the prescription drugs are much stronger. So you have these receptors, pain receptors, filled up by the opiate, by the pain pill, and you no longer experience the intensity or the quality of the pain you were having before. Unfortunately, they also fill up other receptors. They fill up receptors that calm you. They fill up receptors that put you to sleep, acting much like a tranquilizer or a sleeping pill. You can fill up enough of those receptors that you put the brain asleep and you stop breathing and your heart stops beating. That's called death. That's how most people die from overdosages with painkillers, is what we call a respiratory arrest. Sometimes they die from contaminants, especially if they take something that's supposed to be eaten and they inject it. Okay? Another group of pills then after the opiates are the central nervous system depressants. They work by putting brain tissue to sleep, commonly known as tranquilizers and sleeping pills. The ones that I see abused the most nowadays are what we call the benzodiazepine tranquilizers. And the most popular one there that's widely abused is one called Xanax. Now, one of the reasons for that is Xanax is a product that gets into the bloodstream very quickly and into the brain very quickly. So when I take it, I feel its effects within minutes. Unfortunately, drugs that enter the brain quickly tend to be destroyed by the body quickly. So it comes out of my system very quickly too. So I take it, I feel better. A few hours later, I don't feel better. I have to take another one. One of the rules of thumb of pharmacology of medicines is that the faster a drug gets in you and the faster it leaves you, the more addictive it is. And the benzodiazepines, at least some of them, are very fast and very, very addictive. How do they work? Very simple. They work just like booze, basically. They work by putting your brain asleep. They fill certain receptors in the brain that enable certain things to move around in the brain more freely in and out of brain cells. Those cells slow up and they go asleep. And you will too if you take enough of them. Same factors here. If I overdose on those, I can put my whole brain asleep. I can stop breathing and die. That's particularly true if I mix them with alcohol, because alcohol also is putting the brain asleep. You put those two together and you have what's called synergism, where 1 + 1 no longer equals 2, but it equals 4. Each makes the other stronger than they would be by themselves. The third category of drugs that are widely abused are the stimulants, the uppers. These are everything from stimulants used to treat attention deficit disorders, such as Ritalin, amphetamine, to drugs that are used primarily for dietary purposes, phentermine, Diedrex. There's a whole list of diet pills like that, including over-the-counter ones that contain substances called ephedra, malwang, or ephedrine. They work simply by getting the brain to wake up more. They actually stimulate certain areas of the brain to pour out massive amounts of chemicals called dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine. That makes me more alert, more wide awake. My brain activity goes way up. Unfortunately, when they wear out, then my brain activity is going to slow down because of rebound, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this film, and also because I've wasted all those other chemicals. I've overused the dopamine, the serotonin, the norepinephrine faster than my brain can make them. And I'm now in a deficit situation with those. So we have these three categories of drugs: opiates, painkillers; sedative hypnotics, tranquilizers, sleeping pills; and the stimulants, the uppers, aren't like Ritalin, diet pills. Why are they addictive? What is it about these drugs that makes them addictive? Well, basically, it's three things. Any drug that's addictive, as you take it, you develop a tolerance to. The brain and the body adjust to its constant presence. So in a very short period of time, the effects you used to get from a certain dosage no longer works. So you have to increase the dosage. That's called tolerance. All three of those categories of drugs you develop tolerance to. Then after you get to a certain point with them, if you try to stop them, you get withdrawal. Now what's interesting is the withdrawal syndrome, the things you're going to experience, the symptoms you're going to experience, are going to mimic the reasons you took the drug in the first place. So if I've been doing tranquilizers for a period of time and I stop them, what am I going to start noticing? Increased anxiety, restlessness. I might even get the tremors or the shakes like I used to have. And that's what I went to the doctor for originally. I went there because I was shaky and anxious and restless and irritable and I couldn't get a good night's sleep. And that's what he gave me those pills for. So what do I think? I think, I'm re-experiencing the symptoms that I took these pills for in the first place. So obviously I'm not any better. I may as well take them some more. However, I now have tolerance, so I have to take the larger dosage. Now that withdrawal phenomenon can also be referred to as rebound. And you do see rebound or return of symptoms with all three categories of drugs. If I take the opiates and I get addicted to them and I stop them, what are the common symptoms? Muscle aches and pains, muscle spasms, intestinal spasms with diarrhea, nausea, perhaps vomiting. Picture the worst case of the flu you've ever had, multiply it by about 100 times, and you've got opiate withdrawal syndrome. Well, that's pretty painful. Well, wait a minute, that's what I took them for. I was having aches and pains, so I need more of them. I'm not cured. I still have the problems that I took them for, so I go back and get them again. Stimulants, what happens when you stop those? What's the rebound there? I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I want to sleep a lot. I've lost energy. I can't focus. I can't concentrate because I'm depressed. Rebound from stimulants causes all of that. Well, that's what I took them for. When I went to the doctor, I couldn't focus. I couldn't concentrate on things. I didn't have any energy. I didn't have any motivation to do things. And he gave them to me, and I was better, so I need to take some more of them. This explains to me the addiction of almost all drugs: tolerance, withdrawal, and rebound. If you didn't have any of those three things, you wouldn't have a drug that was addictive. Now, what are some of the signs that people have? What do I look for? What could you look for that might indicate a problem with prescription drug abuse?